Welcome to a special edition of RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. This is the NFL Playoff Challenge edition. I know a lot of people like playing fantasy football in the postseason, but even if you don't like it, we'll cover ideas about each team as you're handicapping the playoffs. It could help you with betting, enjoyment of football. It's a great time we'll have today. Now, I have an article that will be dropping tomorrow, Tuesday, on RotoWire that'll go over much of the content I'm talking about today with an entire cheat sheet. If you want a free look at that one, tomorrow again, which will be Tuesday, go to rotowire.com/Jim. No credit card needed, just an email address. Go behind the paywall, see what we're all about. Hopefully you like what we have to offer, but definitely that article will be up. But we'll go through the nuts and bolts today. So if you're playing in a fantasy football playoff challenge, first thing is we want to just learn as much about the teams and recapitalize what we learned throughout the season so we have a good idea of what each team is. And because you have to handicap the games. Realistically, you got to pick who's going to win and lose. Now, if you want a little more help with that, on Tuesday on this RotoWire Live show, 11 a.m. Eastern, I'll be on with Doug Orth. We'll do an early breakdown of all the wild card weekend games. Friday, I'll do a deep dive because you may not have to set those playoff challenges to later, but some of you are going early. Now, different challenges here. Some of these are where you can just pick the same people as others. Others is you have an actual draft. So whatever it is, like I said, we're going to talk about specific teams and how they stack up. So first of all, the one and done players. If you're projecting a team to be one game and out, be careful with rostering those players. Now, there are different challenges where you can put a player in, but here's my important point that I want everybody to come away with. In the NFL playoffs, not all the time, but most of the time, there is very hyper specific game planning going on. What that means is this. For instance, if we have a team that is an outstanding running team, but their passing game is lacking, you will see a defense come in and do everything they can to take away the running game, the strength of that team, and then make them win with what they do less effectively. In other words, making somebody beat you left-handed if they're right-handed. You take away, their dominant hand. And that we see a lot in the fantasy and the NFL playoffs. And so if you've seen over the years, you wonder why some players laid an egg in certain games. Usually that's the case. Now, it doesn't always happen. We see star players go off in high-profile games frequently. But again, I think the key is you have to identify, a defense that has the ability to sell out, because sometimes you look at a defense, they don't have the ability or a good enough defense to do that. So you have to really pay attention to this and decide, can this defense do that? Can they take that one player out, and will they be set up for success otherwise? That's, I think, the best way to approach those one and done players. If you think there's no way, nothing can be done otherwise. For instance, the Rams are playing the Lions. If you have the Lions winning this game, you'll see that, okay, the Rams on offense, they can run with Kyren Williams. They can certainly pass with Stafford, Kupp, and Nakua. The Lions are very good against the run. They're terrible against the pass. If they dump a whole bunch of defensive backs to stop the pass, they'll get shredded by Kyren Williams. And I don't think they're willing to go there. So that's where you weigh this out and you say they're probably not taking them away. So that's my whole point about the one and done players. Just be very cognizant of how you approach them. Now, let's talk about each of the 12 playoff teams. You're going to have different opinions. You're a smart football fan, you're a smart football analyst, or you're a smart football fantasy player or a gambler. We know that. I'll give you my take on the teams. You frame it, of course, your way. You make your best decision. I'll give you what I know. And then together, you come up with a great idea, like you always do. All right. So first of all, let's start with the chalk. And look, most years, Wendy's in the house. Hey, Wendy. Most years in these challenges, we often fade the chalk because in most years, the chalk doesn't always make it. And if they do, you're taking a calculated gamble. This is a weird year. Honestly, there are no other teams that were seriously competing for the number one seeds. The Bills were the number 2 seed. They were out of the playoffs 3 weeks ago, right? Over in the NFC, you had the Cowboys, you got the Eagles. Cowboys losing a lot on the road. The Eagles can't win anymore. The Lions, very strong team, but really not seriously. And I know record-wise they could have made it at some point in time, but these teams were not in the class of the Ravens and the 49ers. So this is one of those years, and not only do they get the bye, remember one team gets a bye now. In the last few years, that's been the case. But both the Ravens and the 49ers took an additional bye week for their key players. And then you factor in like the 6 or so days of the game and divisional weekend. Basically, they're getting about 20 days off for their players. And that is a massive, massive rest advantage for these teams. Now, some people worry about the rust factor, and there's clearly some concept to that. But in terms of the 49ers, they are healthy enough. Now, we don't know the status of Christian McCaffrey's calf. It said it was a calf strain. That means a lot of things. We don't know how severe it is, and they've not said any words. So if you have any worries about that, you got to think about it. You got to think, look, I wonder if McCaffrey's limited. Right now, I would tend to think I haven't heard any smoke. Therefore, I tend to think that he will be fine for the playoffs and he'll be fully rested with that 20 days or so off. I think that works. We talked about it. In terms of the NFC, there is not a defense that has the manpower or scheme to slow down the 49ers. And if the 49ers get a lead on you, good luck dealing with their pass rush. Their corners can be beat, but if you're trailing them and you have to throw, now they can just pin their ears back and get after you. That's a real problem with the front four and the rotation they have. So look, the 49ers can lose. Any team can lose, but I am going to heavily go with the chalk 49ers picks when I can in these fantasy playoff drafts. And look, the Ravens, I know Lamar Jackson does not have a good playoff record. He's not really the same guy right now. He's always been a very good quarterback, but you can tell in this Todd Monken offense, he's evolving. He's a great quarterback, great player. And he's not just putting the team on his back with his legs. Yeah, he's winning with his arm. The numbers aren't eye-popping. We know that. Numbers are not great. Some weeks they are. He had the 5-touchdown game recently, but they're not always eye-popping. But they do what they have to do to win. Well-coached team, talent on both sides of the ball, great coaching. The defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald. It's really going to be difficult for a team to take Baltimore out in the AFC. Can happen. I don't see Kansas City. Miami as threats. We'll talk about the teams individually. I mean, the Bills, we'll talk about them in a bit. I really don't think they're a serious threat to the Ravens either. We'll talk about them in a little bit. So if this is a year you're going to go with the chalk, I cannot fault you for that, because this is just an odd year where these teams are so much better than the competition. Usually I make a good case for other dark horse teams. But here are, I perceive the two most serious challengers. And these are teams that you'll want to consider in your fantasy challenges because there are some scenarios that can go right. We've heard the narratives about the Cowboys, and it may be true, right? They struggle on the road. Yes, check. They haven't looked great when they're facing top teams. Check. We're always worried about Mike McCarthy. What move is he going to make late in the game when the game's on the line and the season's on the line? These are all relative. They're relatively, and they're correct. This problem. But ultimately, Dallas will have at least 2 games at home. And then if the 49ers win their first game, then if they won, they would have to go there. But they have 2 home games, and there's that. And we know if they face the 49ers, yeah, it's not going to look good. But at that point, Dallas would have 3 games played. So if they get to that point, they're very live because the 49ers have a bye. They're only going to play 3 games if they go through the Super Bowl. So you're kind of looking at similar numbers there. So in this offense, look, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb are playing great football right now. And then, of course, you have Jake Ferguson thrown in there, and they can always go to Brandon Cooks. Tony Pollard hasn't been phenomenal, but been okay, but not, it hasn't been a great season for him. But yeah, Dallas is dangerous. And defensively, they're going to have to get on the heater. And I don't know what exactly they're going to do that. The defense is not playing that lights out football against the better teams. Micah Parsons is going to have himself a playoff run, but that's clearly in the range of outcomes. So again, Dallas is dangerous. I don't see them as a serious threat to the 49ers. When the 49ers play them, they rightfully own them. And I just don't see that there's any way the Dallas franchise can come up and make that upset. But maybe somebody else knocks off the 49ers in the second round, and then we're talking Dallas at home. So that's the strange thing. If the 49ers somehow, do the unthinkable and lose in their first game, Cowboys at home, that's a different story, right? They play much better at home. And then, look, I got to give the Rams some credit here. The Rams are flawed. Their pass defense is bad. They really, really struggle on pass defense. Now, Aaron Donald, Byron Young, and Kobe Durant, they've been good against the pass rush. The pass rush has been good. But if the Rams don't have a big lead, and it's not just a dominant pass rush, it's just going to, knock you off your heels. So The Rams are very good against the run. But the teams that are going to make noise in the NFC are probably going to be passing the ball. And so I think the Rams are in trouble there, but it's going to be very hard to go fight against Sean McVay. Sean McVay proves year over year. This year, he really proved it. I mean, Puka Nacua was he a 6th-round draft pick? Kyron Williams last year, barely in the mix, didn't look like much of anything. He understands, we run the duo downhill system because we see the defenses now, they've learned to adjust to the run. That was the antidote. A lot of coaches aren't going that way. Maybe personnel doesn't fit it, but McVay makes it happen. Puka Nacua, all of a sudden, superstar. Now it makes me think back, Cooper Kupp. I wonder what he would have been without McVay. Would have been a very good player, but would he have been what he was? McVay continues to get it done. And I just don't see a defense. Of course, if they play Dallas or the 49ers, there are going to be some issues. First round against Detroit, I don't think that Detroit defense could slow them down at all. That's going to be a real problem for Detroit. That's a bad matchup for them. And they're playing indoors. And that makes it really difficult, too, because that offense will be running at peak efficiency. So, yeah, I do see the Rams as dangerous. And if the Rams can get in a shootout with anybody and they can compete. So the Rams have to be taken seriously because no matter who they face, they can score with anybody. Now, it's going to be matter, can you get Matthew Stafford off the spot? Can you rattle him early? Yeah, these are all things, and that's why they're not a favorite to win. But they're dangerous. All right, so now, next 3 teams. I like it from the movie, I can't think of the name, Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance. So there's 3 teams. Things aren't going well for these 3 teams. Well, 2 of the teams are not going well for to some degree. But there's one team in there that we'll talk about for sure. Let's start out with the Browns. The Browns have a chance. Here's the Browns' best chance. Defense, right? We know they play great defense, but they give up points in some games, right? So it's not like they're shutting people out. They got to get past Houston in the first round. I do see that as a good matchup for them. If they get through their first round, the best thing that can happen to the Browns is playing road games against winter weather teams. Well, guess what might happen? Baltimore? Yeah, you can get winter weather in Baltimore, right? You certainly can get it in Buffalo. And if the Browns get through that first game and they're playing in nasty weather, sign me up for that defense in nasty weather. In a game where offense is a struggle to move the ball, now you tell me you got Myles Garrett and the men coming after you. That's a long afternoon. Rob, thanks for commenting. So, yeah, they're dangerous. And Joe Flacco, look, to a degree, it's not a joke. The Kevin Stefanski offense, it's play action, quick strike. And Amari Cooper was talking up Flacco quickly. You could tell based on those comments from Cooper, they got on the same page right away. And Amari Cooper, he's always been the alpha in his office, well, most of the time. But this is different. This is a quarterback that understands the importance of getting the ball. And then they've weaponized David Njoku. So it's like Flacco found, these are my 2 guys. And it's difficult to take them away because the play action game, you have to respect the play action game. The tackles are a problem. They're down to a 3rd string at one or 2nd string at the other. Interior line is getting healthier. So there's that. But Flacco's getting it out quick. Will he make mistakes? Sure. But again, the whole point with the Browns, if you get them in bad weather after that Houston game, that's in a dome. But if those other games get nasty, I love their chances better. All right, next one, the Eagles. All right. Of course, we know they're not. Hey, Randy, they're not playing well. No question. Nobody's going to fight with me on that one. Eagles fans won't fight with me on that one. But look, they're not fixing the defense. That one I'll tell you. Defense is not getting fixed. The corners, Slay and Bradbury, cornerback play is often year to year. You don't always, some corners don't always play the same level. They're both been a bit down this year. The run defense isn't what it was earlier in the season. The linebacker play is atrocious. The safety play is nowhere near par, and that means their middle of the field is very compromised. They're not fixing this. And Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, I've talked about all year. Even though they were scoring points earlier in the season, it lacked flow. The offense lacked flow. But here's their chance. Ultimately, we're hoping Jalen Hurts' finger's fine. We're hoping A.J. Brown's knee is fine. We're hoping Devontae Smith is back on the field. Whole lot of hoping going on here. And DeAndre Swift will be fine. It was an illness from last week. But if those guys line up on the field, and if they decide to just kind of throw the offense away and say, you know what, Just grip it and rip it. Hurts. Get it to the superstars. Let's just play some ball. Dallas Goedert, if I didn't say his name, of course, Dallas Goedert, we skipped him. There's a world where they just say, you know what? Forget it. Let's just go at it, fire the ball, and see what happens. And with that talent they have, yeah, they could go on a bender for 3 games. There's a very good world that can happen. Do I predict it? No. This team could be out in 1 game. The beauty of the first game is they're playing the Buccaneers. We'll talk about them later. I'll talk about them. The Buccaneers are not a good team. And the Eagles could play a mediocre to bad game, and they might get out of there with a win. And they might not, but they might. And if they get through 1 and the players get a little healthier, again, with that offensive talent, they might be able to make something happen. Next, the Bills are a team you think I would put on the biggest challengers list, but I put them on the you're telling me there's a chance list. So, look, they're on a winning streak. I get it. Were they that impressive against the Patriots? Their defense showed up early. They won 27-21. Were they impressive against Easton Stick and the Chargers? They barely won that game. I think they won it in the last couple minutes. So realistically, and Miami, great win. They needed a Deontay Hardy punt return. They needed a weird play where a tip pass to Trent Sherfield. And Miami was banged up. No Raheem Mostert, no Jalen Waddle. So, and it wasn't a commanding win. So what are the Bills right now, right? They had that streak a little bit earlier where they were looking like, oh, wow. But then you look back on, oh, wait a minute. They beat the Eagles. Maybe that wasn't as great as we thought, right? But they won their games. Throw no shade on the Bills. Throw no shade on them. But we see it. Josh Allen making the mistakes. 2 picks yesterday. One might have been a punt, but, throw downfield, fine, whatever. But still, the mistakes are still there. And they were able to overcome in this game. But again, that's a concern with the Bills. And the Bills haven't shown the ability to consistently play those games where we have no concerns. It's sneaking up way too often. The James Cook games, he occasionally has a few good ones, and then all of a sudden they kind of lose their focus. For a while, it was working with Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid, and then all of a sudden, like 2 weeks ago, they backed off on the snaps. They got Trent Sherfield back in heavy. Now, they fixed that the week after, which is fine. But again, problematic here. But yes, defensively, look, they got those safeties. The thing I like about them, they're veterans. Great leadership, communication. That defense could game plan up. Rasul Douglas, he got banged up yesterday. I think he'll be okay. Not Tre'Davious White, but you know what? Maybe he was actually playing better than White coming off the ACL a couple of years ago. Rasul Douglas playing well for them. So I think all together, they can string things together. All right, next, let's go to the couple one-dimensional teams. Now, these teams are going to need some breaks to win multiple games. There's no question. They're not, this is going to be a problem. The Lions. I love the Lions. Love the Lions. Incredible to see what they've done under Dan Campbell. Love the Lions. I talked about earlier. If Nick Mullins in 2 games, 2 weeks apart, could shred you for about 400 yards in each game, you've got a problem. I know they got Justin Jefferson. If you watch that game, the one yesterday, how much space Justin Jefferson had to roam the field was sickening. The pass defense is a real problem. The run defense is great. Hard to run on them. And this is the thing. They really can't sacrifice that run defense just to put people back. Because, I don't think the bodies they're putting back there are very good. They had injuries early in the season. In the offseason, they invested in the secondary, but they've had injuries. I just think overall that the outside corners are a problem. The outside corners are a real problem. And in the playoffs, that's a problem. And look, when Detroit's at home, it's in the dome. And so if they're playing in bad weather, they're not going to be playing in bad weather. If they win and Dallas wins, they go to Dallas. If Dallas loses, they play in. The best thing the Lions could hope for would be muddy weather. They're not getting that. And then offensively, the Sam Laporta injury. It looks like he's going to try to play, but clearly he's not going to be near 100%. And if defenses don't have to worry about him, all of a sudden you can gang up on St. Brown. Now, Jamison Williams got nicked up a couple of weeks ago. He's on the outside, but he's inconsistent. And you got Josh Reynolds. Now you got the running game. But again, depending who you're playing, like the Rams, it's a bad running game matchup for them. Now, they'll get it done. They'll get something done. But again, that running game is not quite as dominant as we're really going to see. They have games, but against good run defenses, I don't know. And I can't explain it. Maybe it's Montgomery doesn't get into a rhythm, and maybe Gibbs doesn't get into a rhythm because they split the work too much. Don't know if it's that. But it takes over some games, but there are a lot of games it hasn't. So, again, Now, the next team, the Packers are going to need some real breaks. Maybe they'll get lucky. They're facing Mike McCarthy in their first game. Because McCarthy makes a couple dumb errors, they might move through. Jordan Love, great. His rise has been beautiful. Packers fans got to be so excited about Jordan Love. And it's the marriage of him and Matt LaFleur, the schemed up offense. It took LaFleur a few weeks to basically find what Jordan Love did best. Also, those young guys were learning. All those receivers are like young. And so is everybody learning together? And that offense has become a thing of beauty. And Aaron Jones, 120 scrimmage yards in the last 3 games. Man, if A.J. Dillon's healthy and they put him back into a 12-touch role, they're missing the forest for the trees, because Aaron Jones right now, healthy on the field, playing like a star. That offense is dangerous with Aaron Jones and the passing game clicking. But of course, the problem, Joe Barry. They can't afford to make mistakes on offense. And with young players, with playoff game scripts, looking to confuse the young quarterback, likelihood of a mistake happening, yeah. There's a strong likelihood a mistake or two happens. And that defense, I don't think could bail them out. And so that's the problem with the Packers. It's just the defense. That's your problem. Now, it's going to be, the other teams are all going to be very tough to invest in, but I'll give you the why so you can make your decisions on them. First of all, the Dolphins and the Chiefs, and they play each other. So one of them's advancing. I think the Dolphins beat the Chiefs. Why? Here's why. Chiefs can't stop the run. Now, early reports on the weather, be nasty weather in Kansas City. That's terrible for Tua, terrible for passing game. But I don't think they want to pass against Kansas City. Mike McDaniel from the Ravens, McDaniel from the Dolphins. McDaniel's a pretty smart guy. And the Chiefs can't stop the run. And the Chiefs aren't selling up to outstop the run. They understand today's NFL. They benefited from that same type of defensive game plan. Mostert should be healthy. He was limited practice last week. Achan's in here. Bad weather. Miami goes into Kansas City, and they might run for 200 yards. They run for 200 yards. I like taking the 3.5 for sure. Betting line is right now is Dolphins plus 3.5. Love that 3.5 line. That said, the problem, the pass rushers. Jalen Phillips got lost on Black Friday to an Achilles. They lost Bradley Chubb in a meaningless blowout game. That's going to be a problem. But Vic Fangio, we saw it a bit last night. He'll blitz. He'll put up some creative blitzes. Because if he can't get pressure organically with 4, he's got to manufacture it. But he's such a smart coach. It's not telegraphed. And that sets his cornerbacks up for better success. And look, the Chiefs, I do not trust their offense right now. And Vic Fangio, look, I love Rashee Rice. Playing great in the second half. They finally started using the guy, right? But Fangio's going to give us some real confusing looks. And Rice may have to make some adjustments. Don't know if he's there in his game yet. And Travis Kelce is just, what did he get, 1,000 yards? He missed by 15, 16 yards. Anybody fear him anymore? They're still going to put tension on him, but I don't think he's whipping you anymore. Pacheco's been playing great. Miami run defense is pretty good. So that's it. Randy says it's frigid. Maybe Taylor Swift stays home. Kelce steps it up. Love it. So anyway, the Dolphins, they could get through this game. If you see the scenario that way, you could make them as a 2-game player. But that doesn't mean they're going to have big fantasy stats from the passing game. It really could be the running game getting there. And then the Chiefs, I kind of mentioned it already. I lumped them together. The winner of that game gets 2 games for sure. But I'm not convinced. And I know Miami hasn't beaten anybody on the road. And I know they haven't really beaten much of anybody. They beat Dallas. They nicked Dallas in a home game. But that run defense deficiency for the Chiefs is real. Next, the Texans. Man, the Texans have been fun to watch this year. C.J. Stroud is a star. So awesome. Nico Collins. I've been on him since his rookie year, but he got hurt the first year, got hurt the second year. And I wasn't as heavily invested in him as I should have been this year. But I just, I thought he's more of a 50-50 ball winner, just very good in the red zone and downfield. So much more. Bobby Slowick offense, true alpha stud. But ultimately, Singletary's had numbers in some games, but he's not a sustaining back. And the loss of Tank Dell hurts. It takes a limitation to the offense that wasn't there. That vertical element he added, stretch the field, another big-time receiver, it hurts. And defensively, the pass defense is more down than up, and a good offense can take advantage of that. They're really good against the run, but again, I don't think that matters in the playoffs. I think that's going to be, you're going to be able to pass on them. And so I think it's going to be difficult. Do they have a chance against Cleveland? Sure they do. They're at home. They do have a chance. That's going to be a big game for either team. The Steelers, well, now they have to start Mason Rudolph. He won 3 straight games for him. They have to start him. Can't go back to Kenny Pickett at this point because Pickett got him in trouble in the first place, right? So Mason Rudolph's in. TJ Watt, sounds like there's little to no chance he's going to play. That injury is huge. Pittsburgh defense is so different without TJ Watt. Level of pressure they can create with him, it frees up the other guys. Alex Highsmith's a great player in his own right, but man, you're so much better when you're on the other side of TJ Watt. And then the other players coming in on blitzes, yeah, it makes it real difficult without him. Not so good. So, and they're playing Buffalo. Nasty weather game. Pittsburgh can handle nasty weather. They're from Pittsburgh, but not having him. And the problem with Mason Rudolph's going to be this. There's going to be some confusion. He stares down receivers. He's a very flawed. He's a third-string quarterback, right? And eventually, hyper game plan specific NFL playoffs. They know that Pittsburgh 3 times this year has killed people on the quick slant. Pickens twice, I think, and Deontay Johnson last week. But yeah, I think that they overplay that. And Mason Rudolph, I just don't see it happening. I just think that, he will be really exposed by a good defensive team in the Bills. I think it's going to be very problematic. They'll try to get the run game going, but Daquan Jones being back a couple of weeks ago, he came back for the Bills. He is the linchpin of that run. Ed Oliver's a stud on the inside too, but the run game, that's Daquan Jones, right? He's in there with, so that's going to be really tough to run. So Pittsburgh's going to have game script probably work against them a bit. Finally, the Buccaneers, a great story this year. Baker Mayfield had him in the super flex leagues, my third quarterback, but got lucky with that one. It worked out so well. But you know what? Running game, not dominant. Rashad White's had good fantasy numbers. Lovely fantasy player. Won people titles. Happy if you rostered him in fantasy, but does not present a sustaining run game. The offensive line doesn't help, but he's not a big-time grinder for the playoffs. And then Mike Evans has been held to 70 or fewer yards in 4 of the last 5 games. Now, defense have begun to bracket him more than ever, which you didn't think they would do it in week 1. And then all of a sudden, Chris Godwin seeing a lot more targets. But you see, Godwin's running a lot on the outside. He isn't like running primarily slot like he did earlier in his career. And that's, if he ran that slot, that offense would be way more dangerous. They're not going to fix that. But in defensively, like the Buccaneers, they got some names. But if they're playing a good offense, they're in trouble. I don't know who comes out of the Philly and Buccaneers game. Again, that's another one. Either one could win. I'm leaning toward the Eagles winning that because, look, the Buccaneers, DJ Chark fumbles that ball. Should have been a touchdown. And they have a backup kicker. Carolina, they miss a field goal. Bucs scored 9 points at Carolina. That's it. And the week before against New Orleans, they got garbage time points. They did nothing in that game. So I think right now this is a team that's had their best football behind them. And I think right now they're going to be a whimpering out in the playoffs. So I'm not really looking for that. Before we get out of here, just injuries. Just remember, I mentioned earlier, we don't know Christian McCaffrey's true status with the calf strain. We're not going to hear. They don't have to report. They don't have a game this week. A.J. Brown, keep your ear to the wall for his deal. That knee injury at first looked like it was bad, but then he seemed like he's limping off, so we're not sure that. Obviously, Sam Laporta, he's going to try to give it a go as of right now, but that's a real uphill battle. I would be very nervous to invest in him in a fantasy challenge because my guess is that he's not close, but if he's going to make play because he has to. Miami should get Mostert and Waddle back, so we should be fine there. Amari Cooper had a heel injury, missed 2 weeks. We don't know if that injury is actually serious or not, and that could be problematic. But as of right now, wait for the practice participation reports to make sure Cooper's out there. Elijah Moore, if you're digging a little deeper, he had a scary concussion in week 17. He was overnight in the hospital for that one. He'll still need to be cleared by the independent neurologist, so we'll keep an eye on that throughout the week. Christian Watson of the Packers missed 5 straight games with a hamstring injury. We have no idea if he'll be ready, and if he does, what effectiveness level. Noah Brown of the Texans had an injury to his back and missed the Week 18 game. His depth is needed with Tank Dell. Not that he plays well every week, but having him out there certainly helps them. Tyler Higbee of the Rams, if you're digging a little deep at tight end, he didn't practice ahead of week 18 with a shoulder injury, and we're not sure that. And then the Gabe Davis injury. He sprains his PCL. Early reports say he may be able to play, but, man, he had a lot working against him. So even if you have the Bills going, you got to be careful with where you rank him. Anyway, that all said, rank your teams out. Project the games, make picks. When you do your fantasy challenges for the playoffs, base it on your view of the team and who you think's in advance. Find one underdog team that you think will advance. Mine are all pretty trendy. Mine are trendy. It's, the Bills, the Cowboys. I really top 4 teams, and I hate doing that. It's not the way to do it. Everybody likes the Rams, so there's nothing trendy here. I have the Browns playing 2 games if that helps, and if they play with nasty weather, they could advance, but then that means they may not have a lot of fantasy points. So there's that. So all that said, if you want to look at the actual article, rotowire.com/Jim, that'll come out on Tuesday. It'll have the player rankings as well. Also, we'll be doing shows this week. Remember, Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern, I'll be on with Doug Orth on Tuesday, as I said, and we'll go through a early look at all the wild card games, get you set for that. Friday, I'll come back and do more of a deep dive and some player props for you. And we're not doing weekend shows at this point. Remember to find me at Jim Coventry NFL on the X. I'll be on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio 87 tonight, 8 to 10 Eastern with Nick Whalen. I'll be on again Thursday night. Maybe Nick Whalen again. I think I'm twice with Nick. That'll be good. So anyway, you can catch me there. Appreciate every one of you. Hope you enjoyed the regular season. Hope the playoffs is an immense time of fun for you. Randy, always appreciate you, man. Good friend, good support. Appreciate you greatly. For everybody out there, again, reach out to me on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. Be happy to interact with you. Have a great day, everyone, and we will be back Tuesday with another show.